First, I'll just say I'm Michael Breen. Welcome to Faculty Office Hours. I teach history and humanities.
Right,
And
and I'm
so
David Garrett, and also welcome to Faculty Office Hours. And like Michael, I teach in the history and humanities programs.
the thing to know is that the history department's curriculum and courses are structured around the premise that history is an intellectual process through which we attempt to understand, interpret, and represent the past in a way that makes sense in the present. Because of our relatively small size, we're 9, I think, right now. We don't try to cover all periods and places, but rather our focus is on helping you learn and develop the variety of skills and practices and perspectives that define the discipline of history. We offer courses in a wide variety of topics, ranging from US and global environmental history, global Latin American social history, which is David's specialty, modern intellectual history, the history of gender and race in the United States, Chinese history, British imperial history, medieval legal history, which is a course I offer, and the history of science, among other subjects. More broadly speaking, what we really focus on developing, fits into the larger Reed curriculum, liberal arts curriculum, which is our majors develop skills, we hope so, to read carefully and critically, that is to analyze, assess, and critique competing arguments and interpretations, often about the same events, say different interpretations about the French Revolution or about British colonial history. We also emphasize the attentiveness to historical, cultural, political, and social contexts. In other words, how to recognize the fact that what look like very similar things may in fact have very different meanings and significance in different times and places. And also the ability to think kind of comparatively across and between different cultures, time periods, societies, etc.
History majors, in addition to these 6 history classes, have to take a full year of the 200 level humanities classes. That's early modern Europe, or classical Chinese humanities. And finally, like all the majors in history and social sciences, and I kind of want to stress this, history majors will have to take 2 units in each of 2 other social sciences. So you could take 2 anthros and 2 econ, or 2 sociology and 2 econ. You pick the field. And I want to say why we do that, and what makes the division a very strong division is that basically all the departments and fields in the division look at human society and analyze human society. Finally, because the history is basically everything that happened in the past, and we're a really big field, so we are an integral member of a lot of interdisciplinary programs. And those would be comparative race and ethnic studies, environmental studies, history and literature, and international comparative policy studies. Okay, in all of those majors, you can get through them without ever doing history, but also in all of those majors, you can have your core concentration be history, in which case you would take a program a lot like the one I just described with a few variations for the history major, but you would also then take a number of other dedicated courses in other requirements, as well as a couple of sort of interdisciplinary core courses like Introduction to Environmental Studies, or the core course in Race and Ethnic Studies. When people ask me what history is, I always say history is the study of the particular. That's what's special about history. You look at kind of the instance itself and you make your rules out of that, rather than, say, for some of the other social sciences, you look for general rules and say, aha, that's what was going on there. I think that's part of the reason why our focus in how we teach and study history is to kind of enter much more through the particular than from the kind of sweeping overview. That, you need to know US history, again, from 1600 to 1900. And if you do that, you get this sort of survey that you kind of can organize and orient you. But the other way to come into it is to say, okay, well, we're going to look at, as I'm doing right now, a class on the Mexican Revolution, which is a very narrow topic. On the other hand, actually, if you really study the Mexican Revolution, what you're looking at is modernization, the role of the state in modern Latin America, politics and civil war. Just central questions about 20th century history. And so I think one reason why that kind of primes our students for graduate school is often when people go to graduate school having taken a lot of surveys, they realize that's actually not what you do in history.
Mm-hmm.
History surveys can present the idea that there is a set established history that happened. And I think as Michael was saying earlier on, that's not what history as a discipline does. History looks at the past and tries to interpret it and make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our students, on the one hand, can feel a little disoriented at the beginning because they don't get the sort of lecture that says this is what happened and this is right. On the other hand, that's not what history ultimately is. And instead, I think our courses are very helpful in getting to think of, oh, I know these things happened. I know that there were inquisitions in 16th century Spain. I don't know why it happened. What's it say about Spanish society and religion and the state and conflict and the economy? And by looking at that one thing, you begin to understand so much more about the society more generally.
So I teach a course on the French Revolution, right? And that's, people might broadly know what happened in the French Revolution. But we spend the first couple of weeks really focusing on the different ways in which historians have interpreted and analyzed the French Revolution, which are very much at odds with each other, right? There are some who argue that it's primarily a social revolution from below, others that it's a political revolution that was really provoked by elites. Now there are more scholars who are emphasizing a kind of global dimension to the revolution because of the way in which the Caribbean and North America were inextricably involved in it, and the Haitian Revolution was not something separate per se. So we foreground in that class from the very beginning the fact that history is about it's about debates, it's about interpretation, it's about making choices about the kinds of questions you ask, the kinds of evidence you look at, and then how you interpret that evidence.
I write with students on sort of, recently I've had the aesthetics of art, music, and post-revolutionary Mexico, the politics of memory museums focused on the dictatorships in Argentina and Uruguay, the American Indian movement and the creation of pan-indigenous cultural practices over the past 50 years, and so on. I mean, really, you get to come up with what interests you. The thing I really love about Reed, I would say, is it's incredibly informal. Everyone's on a first-name basis. It's very casual. You just stop into people's offices. Everyone has tons of office hours. And I would say, I think we're unusual in that most faculty are on campus 5 days a week, pretty much 9 to 5. That's very rare. And are just around. And this campus is not entirely residential, but, I would say probably 70% of students live on campus, and it's still the main focus of life for almost all the students. So there's just a great deal of community that, again, is non-hierarchical. The narrowest thing I love about Reed is you're really not allowed to have any kind of student organization or really a faculty organization that everyone's not welcome to join. Like, we're really not into anything where, like, some people can be part of it and other people can't.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. You can't decide that you're going to take an advanced physics lab without having taken early physics. That we're willing to separate out on. But the idea that it's just, it's very inclusive, very egalitarian, very casual, which I think is really fun.